Hello, this is Mr. Vanscoy again. In this lesson, we're going to talk about what I'm calling terrestrial ecology, kind of our first part of that. Although I'm calling it terrestrial ecology, it really can be applied to aquatic systems as well. Let's get started. Okay, start with a quote here. In nature, nothing exists alone. This is from Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring in 1962. She wrote this book talking about the negative effects on the environment, especially on those of birds, from the use of pesticides. She accused the chemical industry of spreading false information and public officials of accepting those claims without really doing the research on it. She started researching this back in the 50s, and this kind of brought the environmental movement to the attention of the American people, which then later led to the creation of the EPA. All right, piggybacking off from our idea the other day, ecosystems require constant inputs of energy from sunlight or chemicals. And so in these pictures here, we have the producers. This is a picture from my yard, actually. So we've got producers, the grass and the trees. We have consumers, the wild turkeys over here, consuming seeds and grubs and other critters on the ground. We also have decomposers with our worms here, helping to break down that dead leaf debris and things of that sort. And then there are those oddballs, those chemotrophs or autochemotrophs that actually get food from breaking chemical bonds. Moving on to food chains. Food chains and food webs are diagrams that represent feeding relationships, essentially showing us who eats who. The food chains and food webs kind of help model how energy and matter move through ecosystems. Chain represents a single pathway by which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. An example shown here of the owl eating the snake, eating a bird, which eats a grasshopper, and the grasshopper eats the plant. Food chains are more simple than what really happens in nature, but they do a good job of kind of showing basically what's going on. A food web, on the other hand, represents multiple pathways through which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. It includes many intersecting food chains. It demonstrates that most organisms eat and are eaten by more than one species. So we've got a few different diagrams to represent that. And again, although I'm calling this lesson a terrestrial ecology, it really applies to the oceans and freshwater as well. And they have some of those examples here of aquatic food webs. All right, let's take a look at the different trophic levels represented here. The different feeding positions in a food chain or web are called trophic levels, and we can kind of break those up into 4 different levels. So at the first level, we have our producers. These are the ones that are going to make their own food. These are going to be our plants. At the second trophic level, we have our primary consumer. And the third and fourth level, these are all going to be consumers. So they all need to eat something else to get their food. So the second trophic level is going to be a consumer that consumes the producers. The third trophic level, what's called the secondary consumer, consumes the primary consumers. And by the way, our ones that are consuming producers, those would be our herbivores, or it could be an omnivore. When we have our secondary consumer, and our tertiary consumer, the last level there, those are going to be our carnivores. They could also be insectivores, or again, could also be omnivores. All right, our last slide here. Energy and biomass decrease from lower to higher levels. You probably noticed in the last slide that there were only 4 levels. Basically what we're saying here is that food energy source goes up the food chain or food web, only 10% of it is passed on as energy. The other 90% is used up as metabolism or given off as heat into the environment. So another way to kind of think about this is kind of each level up the food chain or web is kind of from an ecology energy standpoint is a little less efficient. So that is going to do it then for us on kind of our energy and ecosystems. And if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask me, or watch the video again, or take a look at some of those kind of secondary resources that I have posted for you. And hopefully that helps.